Why practice archaeology? By Rosa de Barri. Archaeology is a fascinating science. Dictionaries define archaeology as the science that studies the history of man through the analysis of remains and artifacts of the period of interest or study. Why study archaeology? Seventh grade students study the history of man from the Stone Age up to ancient civilizations. How much can you tell? How do you know? Can you name the people who lived in this region shown in the map? Can you name the capital city of the Inca Empire? Can you name 3 of the modern countries where the Incas once lived? How do we know about the Incas? Have you heard of Machu Picchu? What are quipus? How much can you tell? Can you tell the place of origin of this warrior? Can you name and describe his weapons? Can you give the name this warrior was given in his city-state? Can you tell who was a hoplite? How do you know? What evidence do you have? Listed are some of the several applicable Massachusetts standards to the archaeological experience. We can compare information shown on modern and historical maps of the same region. We must learn to use correctly words and abbreviations for identifying time periods or dates in historical narratives. We must construct and interpret timelines and events and civilizations studied. We must distinguish between primary and secondary sources and describe how each kind of source is used in interpreting history. We must remember that artifacts are primary sources. Students must identify multiple causes and effects when explaining historical events. Students must describe ways of interpreting archaeological evidence from societies living no written records. Students must as well learn to identify universals or traits common to different civilizations. For example, what does a ziggurat from Mesopotamia have in common with the Christian symbols shown below? Here you have different artifacts related to a common trait, religion. Artifacts are the primary sources that give information about the civilization. Artifacts narrate the story of their owners. How do we time artifacts? During what era were artifacts being studied used? What function did artifacts have? What is the evidence? Remember, your artifacts are primary source and it's here we have 2 pyramids. Can you tell which was used as a tomb and which was used as a temple? Can you give the locations? How do we get artifacts? Archaeologists dig places of interest to specifically find information about a group or groups of people who had previously lived there. Artifacts may also appear unexpectedly and in different locations, for example, at the seashore, a new land development, at a construction site, many other places. Here we see an archaeologist searching, digging for artifacts. We can also find artifacts unexpectedly when enjoying a weekend by the seashore. In order to facilitate students a first-hand archaeological experience, schools around the globe organize dig projects, and so did our school here in Brockton, Massachusetts. This year, however, our school had a new type of experience. Our project was not an actual dig. Students analyzed artifacts of 9 pits and their locations to make inferences and describe the region and its former inhabitants' way of. Students were guided through several tables, and the first one was an orientation station where a description of the archaeological site and the time was given. Where do you place this project? How do you know? What evidence do you see? What evidence do you have? How can you check out your evidence? What geographical and man-made features can you identify? In this map are 4 physical features were shown, and the 9 sides of the pits were pinned for students. This was the site of pit 3. What might have this been? Matched the artifacts found in the area. Discuss the. These are part of the artifacts belonging to pit 3. What are they? How were these artifacts used? These are additional artifacts of pit number 3. What does the combination of artifacts tell you? What can you infer? Why are they tagged? Why are all artifacts tagged? How does tagging work? In this site of pit number 9, students also have the depth of each of the artifacts. Why is depth important? What does depth tell you about artifacts? In the picture of these artifacts, this pit, what story do these artifacts tell? How did the owners of these artifacts live? What evidence supports your statements? What can you infer if you compare these artifacts and those of the previous pit? Can you tell which of these artifacts is a daguerreotype? Can you tell what are the 2 artifacts in the background? How were they used? Have you heard the word cobbler before? What is the modern term currently used? What is the connection between the glasses and the coins? What inferences can you make? You can probably name most of these artifacts. Can you tell their functions and uses? We have come to the end of our presentation. You see that you must analyze your data and write your conclusions. These must be based on your evidence in order to make inferences and conclusions.